What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Frode of Einherjer. Thank you so much for your time today. It's great to be able to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Cool.
Yeah, it's so cool to be able to talk to you with the release of the new album North Star. Do you just want to talk about like how the making of this album was? I know that there was like a specific concept and story that was revolving around this. How did like sort of the idea for North Star sort of come to be?
Uh, we actually started working on this album just right off the previous one. So it's yeah, there's not this is not a concept album. It's not, but it's like the North Star title. That was more the thought behind that was that we always, we are always in progress. We're always looking for something. We're always evolving as persons, as musicians, and as a band. North Star struck me as a good overall title that reflects, some sense of direction and also where we are and where we are heading, and that also can translate to our inner compass, which is, maybe the most important part of that title, where we are going, and with our inner North Star that kind of guides us towards passion and purpose and life in general. So that's the kind of big bag we put everything in, and yeah, the title itself, it kind of reflects on us really, where we are, and lyrical themes throughout the album are very different, very different, absolutely. And it's most of the lyrics were written post-pandemic. The songs, the music was written prior to the pandemic, but everything, all the text, all the lyrics were written prior. So I no post. So I do think that we somehow, was inspired by the situation we're all in, and especially listen to the Graves. I think that's kind of come through. But otherwise, there are like a good width of themes and topics and stuff. And it's not like our previous albums, or maybe it's at least a few years back. I think the lyrics were more like Norse mythology based, because I mean the things we do are like Viking and Nordic themed stuff, and but for the later albums, I think we're maybe the whole Norse mythology thing are a lot more subtle now than used to be, and we are probably just using the metaphors a lot, and just actually writing about completely different stuff. But we still want to put ourselves within that Viking themed thing that we have always been in. We want to continue being there, so that's why we kind of use the whole kind of a Norse wrapping, so to speak, the Norse wording on everything we write about. So it still feels that we are at the same place, but this has also to do with development and our development. So it's these days we are writing about completely different stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed, like, I feel like people who appreciate this new album will also, like, if they're just discovering you now, will still appreciate Dragon of the North, or, Odin owns Zeal, or, like, even the last album, Nora and Spore. Like, so it's fair to say that, like, Einherjer sort of has, like, a sound or a formula that you try to stick with, right? Is there ever, like, room for experimentation in the songwriting process?
Yes, of course there is, but another factor here is that we are not 20 anymore. So when we progress, we don't progress, in or I mean, when you have an idea, you don't change the course like you maybe do when you are like 20 or something. You find it, then you suddenly you just you can change a lot during the course of a few years. we are in the mid 40s and we kind of establish our sound, and we found the base where we thrive and stuff. So we do change and we do experiment and stuff, but you can add or you can take 5-something years, and I don't really think that we are that different. So I think where we are today, I think it's a good place, but still people can of course enjoy our previous albums, and I think it's especially the Northern Spool is very very similar, both in sound and maybe song structures and everything compared to where we are now. Maybe the biggest difference is that this time we only have English lyrics, and actually on the previous albums we tend to have a good overweight of Norwegian lyrics. So this is the first album in many years that is in all English lyrics.
Wow. And that's actually pretty awesome, because like I thought with the earlier materials that was more in the Norse language. Like I feel like it was a little bit more open to interpretation, but like was that something that you've always wanted to do, or was that just like a spur of the moment idea?
You mean the change back to or over to English? I think that's actually a bit of a coincidence, because on the previous album again there are like 3 or something songs in English, and those were the last songs I wrote the lyrics for. So that is kind of how I ended when I was writing, the previous one. So when I started writing lyrics for this one, it was just natural to kind of continue in English, and it was never the plan, to have all the songs in English, because we normally have some songs in English and some in Norwegian, and even way back in our first recordings, there were like 2 English and 2 Norwegians. So we've always kind of mixed that up. But this time it was like when the whole album was done, it was like, okay, no Norwegian lyrics, but okay, that's fine. And also this time I think it's also interesting to see how many people actually are interested in the lyrics, and that might of course be because they do understand more of it. I mean, lyrics in a Norwegian dialect that is pretty narrow.
Well,
so, yeah.
Well, I've noticed with any band that utilizes the Viking attire, a lot of people are drawn to the story. Like when you look at what Amon Amarth has been able to do, or when you look at a band like Tyr that has like their Faroe Island tradition incorporated in there, or any band that like really has kind of like an overarching theme. So I think people are very like interested in the lyricism, because I feel like with the music, like I don't consider like the music to be necessarily shuffle friendly. I've always looked at your albums like Lord of the Rings. Like if you want to understand Odin owns ye all, you have to listen to Dragons of the North. If you want to listen to Blot, you should first listen to Norwegian Native Act. Like I feel like you need kind of like I want to listen to your albums chronologically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's a cool thing, I guess. They all work, of course, individually as well. But yeah, of course, there is a story there, and not necessarily like it's linked together or anything. But you get a bigger understanding. I think you're more of the history of the band and the previous albums. Of course. Another thing with the whole like lyrical thing, compared to, I mean, like the whole vocal bit, it's like, of course, the language that the lyrics are written in are, of course, important. And one of the coolest things I think about singing in Norwegian is the sound of it, because it is different than English, especially our dialect, which is kind of harsh sounding, because we do have very pronounced like. Especially R's and stuff, the way we say that is more like which is very, very hard, very harsh sounding. And I also use, when I'm when I'm writing, I'm trying to let the vocals have a kind of percussive effect, you know. So it's like the rhythm you are singing is probably more important than the actual thing, actual, you know, thing you are singing, because it has a percussive or like a rhythmic effect to the whole thing, and I think that's very important when you're writing lyrics, that everything kind of fits.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Do you find that maybe sometimes the lyrics or maybe a lyrical idea could influence the music itself in a way, or have you always needed like a full musical composition before lyrics would come into play?
I think if we actually gave it a chance to you know, write the lyrics first, I think it would, but we never do that. We always write the lyrics first, and I never really tried to kind of put music to a text that was already there. So yeah, maybe that's something you should try one day, because yeah, it could be interesting.
Yeah. And being such a prolific artist, because you know you've played with Beelzebub and Battered and like a lot of other different bands, like is there like a usual method to creativity that applies to all your projects, or is it almost like a separate mind frame depending whether you're playing with Einherjer or Battered or Beelzebub or any of the, or you know?
I mean, yeah, the other bands you mentioned, they are like, you know, dead and buried a long time ago. So I don't really have something other than Einherjer right now. Twilight of the Gods is somewhat alive, but it kind of depends on, you know, the rest of the guys and when it's possible to meet again. We do talk about a new album, and the way we do it in that band is completely different compared to Einherjer. For instance, you know, with Twilight of the Gods, I mean, everyone lives in a different country, so the album we did on Season of Mist was that then we kind of just met up in Portugal. We didn't bring anything, you know, any music, anything at all. We just met in a house for a week, and we just starting writing ideas from scratch where everyone was involved. And that's a really cool thing. I mean, we wrote that album in like 2 of those sessions, and that was only like 2 times, you know, a week. So it was, yeah, we wrote that really quickly, and it ended up as a really cool heavy metal album. But the way we work with Einherjer is completely different. I normally write stuff in the studio alone, and we just send that stuff out to the other guys, or maybe me and Gal, you know, sit down and just, okay, let's do a song together. We normally do that, you know, like 1 or 2 songs for each album, which we write together. But most of the stuff is written, you know, alone, and just present that to the rest of the guys.
Mm-hmm. And in order to like get that inspiration, because I feel like with Einherjer, like, I don't know if this is the best way of describing it, but you know, having like this Viking theme and, you know, all these stories and all this, do you almost feel like maybe in your music you in a way like portray a character, or is this just maybe another side of who you personally are?
I think this is definitely a part of us. I mean, another thing is that probably the main influence is, it's kind of hard to, you know, put music to it, but it's, I think one of the main inspirations, probably a better word, is the place where we live. I mean, this area, because that is very rich in history, a very rich Viking history here. So that is probably why we chose this path in the first place. And that's still, I think that still inspires. Because musically, our main influences are like 80s metal. we are really a heavy metal band these days, and it's just that, you know, the Viking thing is just like a sort of a spice, you know, to spice up that heavy metal, because we still wanted to kind of sound has, you know, a certain feel, more like a resound of bygone era kind of thing. We're still trying to create that. We're still trying to make it more like, it's okay that it is heavy metal with, you know, Viking lyrics and stuff, but we also wanted to kind of feel Norse and feel kind of authentic, which is which it isn't, of course, because Viking music isn't heavy metal at all. But we're still trying to kind of get that feeling and that vibe, that at least for us feels right. So that way, I think we have the same approach as we've always had. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's cool because like you're right, Viking, like a lot of people think that the Vikings invented heavy metal before like Black Sabbath did or something like that. And like, I mean, I feel like a band that's the most traditional modern day Viking music is like Wardruna, for example, or
Absolutely.
or High Lung, that's a little bit more involved in their traditional roots. And it's really cool that you use like these cultural influences to influence your music, and obviously elements from the past really influence you, but has any futuristic ideas, or do you ever look at the future for sources of inspiration as well?
Absolutely. Just something that makes you think. It could be anything, really. And that's also the way we write lyrics these days, is that we can actually write about anything, but we are trying to portray that in a Norse kind of wording and rapping. So it on the other end, it kind of comes out as something that is Viking, more or less, if you know what I mean. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it's really, because like I have no, like, I don't really see like people using like the Vikings or Middle Ages or origins as a form of writing music or as a source of inspiration. But I always wondered, like, could this material like have a futuristic sort of concept behind it as well, like because there's always like a modern twist behind it. I've always thought, like, I thought again, heavy metal wasn't around during the days of the Vikings, so I always felt like by having Viking metal, it is kind of like bringing in our past roots with something that's more modern.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you are trying to foresee anything, but I think that a lot of things that we are incorporating in our lyrics is values, old values, which still are good values, and I think that is also, I think, for the future, of course, because well, you can just look around and see how we are treating each other and the earth and everything. I mean, we are we are definitely not destined for the future. So yeah, there are a lot of values that that we are incorporating.
Yeah, and
it's like yeah, especially from the Norse. Especially Edda and stuff, there are a lot of things that are future proof, and yeah, I think that's the closest you can get to have something for the future.
Absolutely. And the final question I wanted to ask you is when it comes to like getting that source of inspiration to write, that creative energy, the spark that makes you write an album, does inspiration sometimes strike when you least expect it, or do you have like a usual room or a usual studio or a usual place that you have to go to in order for like the creativity to flow through?
Yeah, I do have a room, because I do have my studio where I do most of the writing, but of course you can come up with a melody line or riff or whatever anywhere. So these days it's really good to have a phone where you can record ideas and stuff. So I do have hours and hours of me just humming stuff into my phone, and that's probably 95% of that. It's just things that I throw away, but sometimes there are good things there as well, but it is something when I come out here in the studio and sit down and plug in the guitar, and it could be, if it has been a couple of days since I played for the last time, it could easily be the first 3 or 4 things I play that could often maybe end up as half a song. That happens very often. I don't know why. It just, you pick up the guitar, you haven't really planned what you're going to play, but you're just playing something. And very often, if it has been a couple of days since I played guitar, that is really good. So yeah, it's just coincidence really, but it's
Yeah.
It has happened many times.
You ever humming into your phone in like public? Because I've heard so many times they'd be in like a grocery store or on the train or something like that, humming ideas into their phone and getting some strange looks.
Yeah. It could happen everywhere really, and it's also so it is really easy to forget a riff or a melody line. So you have to, when it comes, you just have to record it, right?
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's really great to be able to talk with you. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the release of North Star in terms of maybe like a live stream performance or anything else you would like to plug? Obviously, thanks to a certain bullshit virus that shall not be named, obviously shows aren't happening at the moment, but we'll be able to see you on the road as soon as all this is over, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really looking forward to go out again. That being said, we actually did 2 gigs here in our hometown this weekend. We had a release show on Friday and in front of 100 people, and we had the same then on Saturday. It was supposed to be a gig for 200 people because we were, up until last Tuesday, we were allowed to have gigs for 200 people here at the west coast of Norway. But there were new kind of more strict regulations and stuff from Tuesday. So then we had to split the audience in 2. So we had 2 gigs. But then again, it was, even though it was only for 100 people and seated audience and everything, it was really killer to just do something again. It's a year since we did the last gig. So it's it felt really good to actually do something. And it also really triggered, now we really want to go out there and do something.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't have any streaming or anything like that planned. Basically because there's a certain awkwardness attached to it. So we just, I think we just have to wait this over, and we will definitely be ready.
Awesome.
When the world allows us.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. Frode of Einherjer, North Star, out now. Be sure to check that out. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.